I want to spend some time this morning with Eric Eppler from PennLive.com. We check in with Eric when we want to talk high school sports, not only across District 6, but across the entire Commonwealth. And he's the go-to guy for all of that. And our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning, Eric. Happy New Year.
Good morning, Todd. Happy New Year to yourself. How's everything going out there?
So far, we're here. We got a little bit of snow right now. Well, if you say we're here, by golly, that's saying something at this time in history. So,
Yeah,
so just to be here.
Absolutely.
That being the case, let's talk a little high school sports because they are finally here as well. The winter sports season's being allowed to reopen after the stumbling start there in December, and so teams are getting back to their workouts. As you watched the PIAA in their deliberations last month, and they basically said, here's what's coming, we know it's coming, and therefore we're going to set up these protocols for the restart in January. As you watched all of that unfold, was there anything surprising about the way that they were approaching it? I thought it was a pretty good approach.
Yeah, the PIAA has been very proactive, as you know, since basically the end of last spring. That they've known these things. Once they had to cancel the spring season, they knew all of these protocols were going to have to be put in place, and they were very proactive in getting some semblance of a football season. I felt was a rousing success, getting that not only started but completed in a relatively healthy and basically a safe a manner. Was unbelievable. I think most people thought it would never happen. So that's just sort of bled into what they knew was coming here in the winter. Obviously, you're moving things indoors, which creates a whole mess of problems when you're dealing with the spread of COVID. So that was something they've been very proactive on, and I don't. It doesn't surprise me. I think they've done a tremendous job in trying to get these student athletes a season. I mean, that's been the goal for them, and they've done a bang-up job.
Were there lessons learned from what happened in the fall with the outdoor sports that apply to these winter indoor sports?
Yeah, I think the basic lessons that they learned was basically the social distancing thing. I mean, that was still, it was still sort of new to everything. And how do you sort of keep these guys apart beyond the field? I think that was the big thing that they learned. Basically, some of the mitigation standards that they put in place, as far as limiting capacity, limiting the crowds, limiting the amount of people that were on the sidelines, and basically having in the NFL, like in college, they call them a get back coach. They've had people on the sidelines that said, listen, as soon as kids have come out, put the mask on. Here's where you sit, and just sort of guide these guys because when you're in the heat of competition and things like that, you're an athlete. You don't care about huddles. You don't care about where you sit on the bench. You don't care about all those things. You worry about the action that's in front of you. So to have these people sort of in place and to guide these kids at every turn, I think was something that was not only new but necessary. And I think our schools have learned a lot about that. And that's something that you really have to carry indoors. I think we'll see that a lot with the spacing on the bench and things like that, and how many people you really have around the program. Yeah. Those two things I think are invaluable when you're now moving things indoors.
There are some things that we're going to see that are just going to look strange to us, like playing basketball while wearing a mask is certainly going to be odd, and we can see that there are going to be a lot of instances where those masks slip or come off altogether. I don't know how you wrestle if you're wearing a mask like that, so I would assume that wrestling is not going to be subject to that same rule.
Yeah, I mean, right now it is subject to the rule, but you're right. I mean, that's the biggest part. I mean, I think, coaches have a lot of teams around here have been practicing with masks. I think it will be weird, that's for sure. And you certainly understand the reason for not having swimmers and divers wearing masks. At least that was, a smart decision there. But yeah, wrestling is the big concern, and it's the big question mark for me. I mean, I just don't, how many times do these guys get, twisted and pounded in the face and things like that. I just don't know how you're gonna get around that. But maybe there's just going to be a lot more stoppages and sort of, okay, readjust, let's go, let's get back to it. But yeah, right now that's the biggest question mark for me is wrestling. I mean, basketball teams have been practicing. I think any coach you ask, for basketball and some of the other sports in the winter, even competitive spirit. You've got bowling, you've got gymnastics, and things like that. I think, although it'll look weird, you can get away with it. I think the kids just want to have the season, like I said, and go from there. But wrestling, to me, yeah, I wonder as well about that.
That's going to be something to see, and obviously there will have to be adjustments made. I would think that coaches are going to have a longer bench in basketball because these kids playing their sports while wearing masks. That's a very oxygen requiring sport, basketball, to run up and down the court like that, and wearing a mask through that. Those kids are going to get exhausted. Yeah,
and I think too, to this point too, I think even though the depth of a basketball team, some of these small schools will be more affected. And again, with it depends too how teams sort of approach this season. I mean, are you approaching the season to win a championship, or are you approaching the season to kind of make sure your kids just have the experience, have the season? I think those things will come into play too here as you get in the first couple of weeks. But depth is certainly an issue. I think the spacing on the court is going to be fine. You're going to have no or such a limited amount of people allowed in the gym. I think that you can space these teams out, possibly even put them on opposite sides of a gym if you have a school district that's not allowing fans at all in. So you have room, I think, to do that with basketball and some of the other sports. But, yeah, there's definitely challenges. I mean, it's certainly not out of the woods, and you have to be proactive in putting all these things into place. But again, for most everything, with the exception of wrestling, I think it's very doable.
We're talking with Eric Eppler. He writes for PennLive.com, which is a great website to keep up to date on everything high school, college, and pro as well. It's just a really well-done website. Eric, we talk with Jody Rainey, the president of the Heritage Conference, and a District 6 committee member. We talk with him quite often about athletics here on Indiana in the Morning, and one of the issues that we talked about with him, the fact that finding officials has been really a challenge in the last few years. There are guys and gals that are wearing the stripes and blowing the whistles that are there from the end of the school day doing junior high, junior varsity, and varsity games sometimes. There's a little bit more pressure on school districts to find officials through all of this, especially older officials. Some of those might not be available to them this year. Seems to be okay here in the Heritage Conference, but we can see that sort of pressure, especially when the playoffs come.
Yeah, it was interesting because I'd worked up a story probably maybe 6 weeks before the football season, when really all the officials get lined up, you get all your paperwork in. These are guys that are going to go, and I basically asked a few of the official groups from around the state, are they having trouble? Are they having guys who are opting out because of this pandemic? And most of them said they were fine. Now that's football, that's outside, so it's a little bit different ball game. Now you're cutting down. The crew is just a two-man crew going into these gymnasiums. Like I said, the indoor-outdoor thing changes the perspective a bit. So I have not heard of anything in District 3 in our neck of the woods where they're having trouble sort of lining these guys up for the winter sports season. But I have heard other districts having issues. I know there was an issue in District 10 up in Erie. I know they had some issues from guys I know and talked to in District 2. Up in the Scranton area, there were some of these groups, some of these conference groups that were having some issues. So that's certainly something to look at and take note to, and hopefully we don't get to that point where where we're struggling to find guys. But I'm not opposed to bringing guys up either. I mean, obviously there's a lot of gung ho guys who are now refereeing in junior varsity and things like that, and I think you can get these guys up if you're in a pinch. But yeah, that's certainly something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I've always been puzzled why more high school athletes that finish their careers and they go to college and they're still hanging around their hometowns doing whatever it is that they're doing, that they aren't wearing a stripy shirt and running up and down just to stay in the game. Should be a regular part of the whole athletic experience. One other thing with Eric Eppler this morning that I wanted to touch on, PIAA said that there's no way they're going to go past March and into April, which is when the spring sports begin. Winter sports, they say, going to have to be done by March 31st no matter what. You see any flexibility in that?
I don't. I think the PIAA is dead set on getting that going, and I think a big reason why is, the spring sports athletes lost the entire season last year, an entire season. And I think the more you, basically, the more you push winter sports, the more likely I think a problem exists getting not only spring sports in, but a decent season in. And I think and that's absolutely the priority for the PIAA, is to get the spring sports athletes, the guys and gals who lost a complete season last year, get them going again. So I think you'll see. Maybe it's a day or two, Todd, but I really don't see them going past that hard date. That's something that I think they can get winter sports in. They've got basically 3 full months here, starting this Friday, to get things going and to get done. I mean, we're certainly going to have a cut down PIAA championship brackets in basketball. I mean, at minimum, you're probably going to go from 32 to 16. And we've already cut down swimming. They're not sure how they're going to do the winter championships in wrestling yet. That should be something on the table for tomorrow's meeting by the PIAA. I'm sorry, Wednesday's meeting of the PIAA. So these kind of things are going to get trimmed down in order to hit that hard date. So I would not anticipate them moving past that.
He is Eric Eppler from PennLive.com. Eric, thanks for spending some time with us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Happy New Year as well.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160M and AM 1160M.